Hey everyone! Before delving into the details, I want to address the sensitive nature of the situation with my son. I'm currently facing challenges, and I'd appreciate it if your responses could be kind and considerate. Now, on to my son. He just turned 17 a week ago and is set to begin college this fall. Our relationship has been tumultuous ever since I decided to divorce his mother 2 years ago. Despite my efforts, I haven't been able to mend things with him. He consistently pushes me away, refusing to respond to texts or calls. Even when he visits my house, he isolates himself in his room and avoids interaction. Our conversations are limited to meal times, and he keeps them brief. Frustrated, I began distancing myself and stopped putting extensive effort into repairing our relationship, assuming it wasn't what he wanted. Perhaps that was my initial mistake. The strained relationship with my ex-wife plays a significant role in my son's resentment. I'm 44, and my wife is 42. After almost 20 years of marriage, things took a downturn when I unexpectedly lost my job a few years ago. The sudden job loss was a significant shock for our family. While my wife, a teacher, managed to navigate through financial challenges, she harbored resentment towards me, despite my earnest attempts to secure new employment promptly. I must have been unemployed for about 2 months, but during that period I wasn't idly sitting at home. I actively searched for a well-paying job. My wife took on the financial responsibilities, and we found ourselves barely saving anything. The pressure became overwhelming, leading to daily arguments until we reached a point where communication ceased unless necessary. Bitterness and resentment grew, culminating in her filing for divorce, a decision I didn't contest. By that time, it seemed both of us were exhausted from the relationship. She anticipated some resistance from me, but when I didn't fight for the marriage, her resentment deepened. Despite splitting our assets amicably, our relationship was irreparable. She harbored animosity, and I reciprocated. Nonetheless, we had to function as a team for the sake of our son, who struggled to cope with our divorce. Initially against the idea, he eventually sided with his mother, a painful shift considering our close bond growing up. During the divorce proceedings, we lived separately, with my son residing with his mother as I stayed with a friend. It was during this period that she managed to influence our son against me. I wish she hadn't involved him, but seeking revenge, she believed distancing my son from me would be the ultimate blow. Unfortunately, it worked, and 3 months ago she married her coworker. I know him. He had even visited our house a couple of times when my ex-wife hosted work parties. Their wedding took everyone by surprise, and I was completely blindsided. I didn't know how long they had been together or if she had been cheating on me, but at that point it didn't matter to me anymore, so I didn't inquire. What did matter was when my son began posting about his new stepdad, going to football games, hanging out, and even celebrating his birthday, to which I wasn't invited. He posted a picture with my ex-wife and his stepdad captioned, "Mom and Dad with a heart," which shattered me. I later threw him a birthday party, but he didn't seem excited. He and his friends spent time in his room with cake, while I sat alone in the living room, pondering what had gone wrong. Later that night, after his friends left, he said he wanted to talk about something important. My son then revealed that he had thought about it extensively and concluded that he wanted me to sign over my parental rights so that his stepdad could adopt him. He explained that he no longer felt connected to me and preferred his new family, not wanting me around anymore. I was speechless, and though my initial instinct was to argue, I realized it wouldn't help. If he wanted to be with his stepdad, I couldn't stop him from fighting, so with a broken heart, I agreed to do whatever it took to make him happy. If this was what he wanted, so be it. He thanked me and left the very next day. The following days were the hardest for me. I couldn't bring myself to do anything and didn't even go to work for a few days because nothing seemed worth it. The little guy I was working so hard for, to give him a good life, didn't want that life, at least not from me. I was devastated, spending my days lying in bed, staring up at the ceiling, trying not to break down. I honestly had no idea how to fix this, or if it could even be fixed. I knew this was my ex-wife's doing, and she must be really happy knowing that she had finally ruined my relationship with my son for good. I also hated her new husband passionately, not because he was married to the woman I once loved, but because he was taking my boy away from me. However, there was nothing I could do about this now. Fighting with my son would only make our relationship worse. So the most I could do was accept it and hope that he would come back miraculously. My son did come back just yesterday, but not for the reasons I thought. I believed he'd finally come around, realizing that I was his dad. Maybe his mother had brainwashed him into thinking that his stepdad would be a better fit for the family than me, but that wasn't true at all. I had hoped he'd realize how much I love him, but that wasn't it. I was thrilled when he dropped by yesterday because I thought he'd finally changed his mind, but he still looked very upset. When I inquired about the situation, he revealed that he no longer wanted me to relinquish my parental rights. His stepdad had informed him that they couldn't afford his college tuition, leaving him with no alternative. His mother alone couldn't cover the expenses, so he felt compelled to adhere to the custody agreement if he hoped to attend his desired college. He appeared visibly distressed, which was quite hurtful. It was perplexing to me as I had treated him well, if not the other way around. I couldn't comprehend why he harbored such intense hatred toward me. I hadn't done anything to provoke such animosity from my son. It angered me that he seemed to despise me without any apparent reason, except for his mother's influence, which, I must admit, she executed skillfully. I snapped at him during our conversation, unable to endure the silent treatment any longer. I expressed that he didn't have to stay with me if he didn't want to, suggesting alternative ways to finance his education, such as taking up a job or considering a student loan. I even sarcastically mentioned that if he believed I was the worst father, he should proceed with getting himself adopted by his stepdad to avoid further suffering. He appeared ashamed, and I continued to vent my frustration. The years of being inexplicably hated by my son had taken a toll on me. The floodgates had opened, and I couldn't restrain myself. I clarified that I hadn't willingly pursued the divorce. It was his mother who had initiated it. The reason for her intense animosity stemmed from my failure to fight for our marriage. I don't know what falsehoods she's fed him during his stay with her, but I could assure him that the divorce wasn't solely my fault. He needed to discard any misconceptions he held about my marriage with his mother. At just 17, he knew very little about me or the life I'd led. If he was basing his opinions on the misinformation my ex-wife had been feeding him, he was in for a harsh reality check. I wasn't his adversary, and I hadn't desired a divorce in the first place. However, if that's what she wanted, I wasn't going to stick around. Despite his upset about the divorce, I made every effort to maintain a sense of normalcy for him during our separation. I'd visit during mealtimes, but he, influenced by his mother, would ignore me, believing I was responsible for the divorce. I admitted regret over letting him stay with his mother during the divorce and trusting her not to poison his mind against me. Eventually, I ran out of steam, and my son was visibly taken aback. He didn't say much, just mumbled an apology and returned to his mother's house. It's been a day, and we haven't spoken since. I feel remorseful for letting my emotions get out of control, especially for yelling at him, even though he's just 17 and has been manipulated by his mother for the past 2 years. I also find it cruel that he informed me the only reason he was coming back was for me to pay for his college tuition. In my opinion, that was not acceptable. Am I the asshole for yelling at my son after he revealed he didn't want me to sign my rights over to his stepdad, just because he wanted me to pay for his tuition? Update 1. Hi there. I just want to express my gratitude for the love and kind messages. I'm thrilled to see that many single dads can relate to my story. Stay strong, guys. A lot of you have been curious if I ever suspected my ex-wife of cheating. Honestly, no. Even during our divorce, there was nothing that made me think she might have been unfaithful. Perhaps there were signs, but I didn't pick up on them, and now, it just doesn't matter to me. Whether she cheated or not is irrelevant. She has already proven to be a horrible person by attempting to use our son to hurt me. I don't need any more proof of her being a trash person. Regarding why I didn't try to get my son to stay with me when I was living at my friend's place in the initial months of the divorce, I did try. I did. However, my son insisted that staying at home was more comfortable for him, and since he was in school, I didn't want to cause him or my friend any more trouble than I already was. I attempted to visit him from time to time, but the environment there was so hostile because of my ex-wife that I couldn't stay for long. Eventually, he started hating me, and that's what happened. I don't know what more I could have done to avoid this. I did my best to keep my son away from the drama of the divorce, but my ex-wife made sure to drag him into it, making him hate me. By the time I realized what she was up to, it was too late for me to fix things, and my son was already too far gone. It's been a few days since the last time I spoke to him, and we've been texting but haven't called or visited yet. I haven't heard from my ex-wife either, so I'm assuming that he hasn't told her about me yelling at him either. Under usual circumstances, he would have instantly complained about it and made sure that my ex-wife caused a lot of hue and cry about it. But if he's not doing that and trying to make me look like a bad father, then I guess it means that he's finally coming around. I'm not getting my hopes up yet, though, because I don't want to be let down. But I hope that he calls or visits soon so we can discuss our relationship at length and fix things between us soon enough. Update 2: My son finally visited me today, and it was an interesting meeting to say the least. I won't say our relationship is miraculously fixed now, because obviously, that's not how this works. It takes time and hard work to fix something that has been broken for so long, but today was a start, at the very least, and I'm happy about that. He seemed very awkward and uncomfortable initially, but he did apologize to me for the way he'd been behaving. He admitted that when his mother and I were getting divorced, she did make it a point to tell him how I'd ruined their marriage and wasn't even trying to fight against the divorce to salvage it. Now he believed it. He didn't know any better, and since he was just 15, he wanted someone to blame. The most convenient option was to blame me for everything that was going wrong. Things didn't get better once his mother decided to remarry. My son said that it was all his mother's idea for him to put up posts with his stepdad and make it seem like they were a tight-knit family when, in reality, they weren't even that close. He did it just because he wanted to get back at me for tearing the family apart. He wasn't aware that it was his mother who'd filed for divorce. It was also his mother's idea to ask me to sign my parental rights away so that his stepdad could adopt him legally. But as it turns out, she hadn't even discussed this with him and had just sprung it on him without warning. His stepdad had been taken aback and had said that while he did like hanging out with him, he didn't want to adopt him since he didn't feel that connected to him yet and needed some time to make up his mind. He also mentioned that he didn't want to pay for my son's college tuition, which he inevitably would have to pay if he adopted him. It wasn't as if he couldn't afford it, he could, but he just didn't want to. All of this had taken a toll on my son, which was why he looked so upset the other day. However, he said that my outburst was necessary because it made him realize a lot of things that he needed to know. I was relieved that we were finally talking about this, and he was finally realizing that he'd been lied to and manipulated by his mother. It was an incredible day for us, and we finally seemed to reconnect a little. I know it's going to take a long time for us to get back to normal, but this is a good start. I told him that no matter what has happened in the past, I'm still willing to forgive him for all of it and start fresh. He also promised me that he'd confront his mother about whatever she'd been telling him all these years, and even suggested getting therapy together so we could fix our relationship more healthily and effectively. I'm happy that this is finally happening, and even more thrilled that my ex-wife will finally get what she deserves. She's a horrible person and doesn't deserve to be a mother at all. I know this sounds harsh, but I said what I said. If she's willing to use her son just to make me feel bad, then she's an unfit mother. I think I'm going to file for full custody soon. Of course, I'd have to discuss it with him first, because who knows, maybe he still wants to stay with her despite everything, and I wouldn't want to stop him if that's what he wants, even though that would be very disappointing. I'm going to talk to him and find out what he wants, and then I'll talk to my lawyer. I truly wish that he finds out what a disgusting and selfish woman his mother is, and decides to stay with me instead. I don't say this lightly, but I do wish the worst for her. For years, she's been manipulating and gaslighting our son just so that she can make me feel bad. I can't even imagine how heartless someone has to be to even imagine doing that, let alone going through with it. She's deranged and doesn't deserve a son like that. I truly don't know how I lived with her for so many years, and how she went from a sweet, caring wife to a narcissistic and self-centered monster overnight just because I lost my job. But at least now, both my son and I know what kind of a person she is, and she'll finally get her comeuppance. Update 3: My son just texted me, saying that he's coming to my place and needs me to pick him up from his mother's place. He mentioned that he's carrying a lot of stuff, so he can't take the bus like he usually does. I'm in shock right now because I'm pretty sure that he's decided to move in with me. This is sudden, but I'm already in front of my wife's house, waiting for him to come out. My son has told me to wait for a few minutes, and I can hear the sound of voices inside the house, but I can't make out who's talking or what they're saying. I so badly want to go in and bring my son home with me, but I don't want to trespass because I'm sure that my ex-wife will leave no stone unturned to get me into trouble. So I'm just waiting out here for my son now. Update 4: Okay, so I'm finally back home after a long evening, and I'm exhausted. I feel like I have to share this just to make sense of whatever has happened so far. Like I said, I've been waiting for my son outside my ex-wife's house because he texted me to come pick him up. A few minutes after my update, he finally came out. Even then, I could hear the sound of yelling from inside the house. My son looked furious while walking to the car with his bags, and I soon noticed my ex-wife chasing after him. She looked angry as well, and as soon as she spotted me sitting in my car, she headed straight towards me and started yelling at me from outside the car, with her face right outside the window. It was pretty scary, but I told her that if she didn't back off, I'd call the police. So she took a few steps back, but didn't go away. While I helped my son load his stuff into the car, she continued to scream at me, believing that I had turned our son against her and calling me every name in the book. But I didn't care. I knew the truth, and so did my son, and that's all that mattered. She continued to scream at me even as we drove away. All of a sudden, just a few yards away from her house, she threw a rock at the car and ended up breaking one of my taillights. I drove a little further away and then called the police immediately to report her. My son and I were both shocked by what she had done and couldn't believe that she was acting so unhinged just because she'd been exposed. I pressed charges against her and finally came back home a few hours ago. My son had a total mental breakdown, and I know he's taking this badly. So I'm going to take him to a therapist first thing in the morning tomorrow. I've also made up my mind to file for full custody and a restraining order tomorrow itself, because what happened today was simply unacceptable. I'm still hoping that her current husband realizes what a nutcase he's married to and escapes while he still has the chance. I hope that I manage to get full custody of my son and the restraining order against my wife soon enough as well. Stay tuned for more stories from our channel.